There you go.
All right, welcome everyone to this Millburn School District 24 Board of Education Committee of the Whole meeting. We will have a roll call, please.
Sean Coleman,
Present.
Jim Guzia,
Here.
John Lorenzen,
Here.
Brendan Murphy,
Here.
Peter Petrovini,
Present.
Jillian Phelps, here, and Cassie Roberts.
Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Do we have any public comment? Nothing. Okay, we have a written comment from Stephen Gray. I am deeply concerned about the board's decision to dismiss my public comment submission last meeting. I have valid concerns that are shared with many other parents in the district. It is extremely slippery slope to deny community members access to share public comments at a public meeting. Please read this comment as well as my comment from last meeting. Thank you, Jason and Ben. So Stephen Gray has commented twice on the same thing, asking for Peter's resignation. And so we have a policy that if the person is commenting on the same issue multiple times, we can restrict the comments. So it's not restricting his comments. He's been heard twice. We understand what he needs. And we appreciate public comments, and we encourage people to comment as much as possible, because we want to know what people are doing. And I believe I understand, and the board understands the feelings of many members in the community, and we're following the law in this matter. So the idea is not to suppress any concerns or speech, but to provide opportunities to hear all perspectives from our diverse community. We respectfully ask that there are no new pieces of information or concerns, that we refrain from repetition on topics already addressed. This process is in line with the process outlined on the back of our agenda. We would like our, so that was basically from last week's message that we wrote out. So I'm going to repeat it again and again. Please come with comments. And if we have in any way failed to take it to heart, your comments, then please repeat them. But I think we have heard and responded to that one more than we should have. And that's enough on that. Do we have any additions to information and discussion items?
I have one, and it's relating to the survey that's been discussed over the last few meetings. And what the comment ends up being is if the survey that has been discussed in a couple different ways, if that's not going to go out to the public, that we let them know that it's not, and why not.
We'll put it on. Well, we'll discuss it later on, but I don't think we really have a prepared response for that yet. But certainly take a while.
Okay, basically what I'm hearing is that they don't, for whatever reason, that the survey won't go out, and they just want to know why.
Okay.
That's all.
We will make sure our administration can answer to that. If not this meeting, then the next one.
That's fine. Thanks.
I'd like to pull out 6.60 for further discussion.
Okay. Once we get there. Does anybody else have any other, policies they'd like to pull out of this?
We're not voting on.
We're not-
So
We're not there yet.
this is the
right?
first reading.
Yeah. This is the committee of the whole.
There are some things I'd just like to call out.
Yeah.
Once we get there, just to make people aware to pay close attention to.
So let's go back. Is there any other additions that we'd like to add? No, okay. So let's go into our discussion of board policy. You wanna go first, Peter, or do you want?
Is there, Sean, do you have any that are before 6.60?
Yes.
Just go chronologically.
Okay, so 510, I would just encourage everyone on the board to review the categories, or lack of a better term, protected classes that are identified in this particular policy. Of course, we have those that have been affirmed time and time again, but this is related to a policy discussion that we've had in the past. I'd like to know which of these are required by law and which might be open to discretion. So just take a look at 510. There is one section of 510, which I'll address here for the next one. 550 drug and alcohol-free workplace. And Jason, I would ask your help with this. It seems that, just prior to the next meeting, it seems like there may be conflict of policy here. In 510, we say equal employment opportunity, minority recruitment. They talk about, no one will be penalized for their status as a registered qualifying patient or designated caregiver for purposes of compassionate use of medical cannabis act. In 510, yet when you get to 550, the drug and alcohol-free workplace specifically says that you cannot use marijuana. It seems like those two are in conflict, and implementing both policies might cause some problems in the future. So maybe the attorneys can shed some light on that.
Yeah, you want to address that right now?
Well, I think if you could scroll down a little bit. This policy is saying if someone is prescribed cannabis,
Right,
then they're using it for a medicinal reason. Our
right.
drug policy is saying that you can't be at work taking drugs or drinking alcohol.
But if you're prescribed that, you may be taking it during those hours, right? It doesn't say you're prohibited from recreational use. So all I'm asking is just for clarity, see if there's some legal conflict that might arise here between, adopting both of these policies without some way calling that out.
So I know we've had conversations with our attorneys about these laws and have participated in these workshops explaining this. And our attorneys have reviewed this already, so I'm assuming that conflict has been resolved. But there's a difference between medical prescription and recreational use. For example, it would be no different than OxyContin use. So if someone is using Oxy and is hooked on Oxy and is under the influence and teaching, we would have to remove them from that classroom. And if they don't have a doctor's prescription or are not using it in a prescribed way, we would let them go for that too. So the same would go for medical marijuana. And if you're a bus driver or operating
And
any
that's made
equipment,
clear here.
there.
That's made
Oh,
clear.
that's it.
That is made clear here. But the question is, if your prescription says use it when you need it.
Right.
And you're at work, that's not recreational usage. You're still using it. So my point is in 550, if it says you cannot use it, it doesn't say cannot use it unless prescribed by a doctor. It says you cannot use it. So that's what I'm looking for in clarification. It doesn't explicitly differentiate between prescribed usage in 550 and recreational usage. So I'll just ask, that's something to consider for the next meeting.
Okay.
We don't have to solve it here, but I'd like to know before the vote comes in.
In the answer to your first question about it, are any of those categories, the last time I asked the attorney the same question last fall when it came up, they're all required. And it says it right in the press policy. So if you look at the press policy here, and it has all these numbers of all the categories,
You understand? Right,
they're all referenced in the law here.
exactly. Right, can we scroll down?
Yeah. So my question is there a specific category that
I don't have the press policy plus. I don't see this.
this is on our agenda?
Right, I didn't see that. I went straight to the policy.
Oh, okay.
And then they have footnotes about the legal
Right.
documents at the bottom, so if we can scroll down.
Yep.
Okay, we'll go up just a bit. So this seems to be a conflict too. It says citizenship status provided the individual is authorized to work in the United States, right?
Yeah.
So you don't discriminate on that, but then the next one, work, so I'd like to see here. Work authorization status, can we look at that?
13.
Yeah, 13. Just need one else. Okay, it's the verbiage. So if they have legal work authorization, of course, that's not an issue.
Right.
Of course.
Right.
But that statement just says legal authorization status. Because the prior statement said, of course, if you're legally authorized to work here, not a problem. Right? But that verbiage, okay, and then if we can go back up, Jason. The laws applying to conviction, criminal conviction. Sorry,
No, it's good.
goes back down.
This one has more footnotes than it does content.
Okay, not there, continue down. Okay, if we can keep going down. Okay, so we can take a look at number 20.
Okay.
If you don't, we don't have this. Or I don't know where to find this.
It's on our board agenda.
I'm looking at
It's the middle one, press policy one in the middle.
Oh, the middle one. There you go. Thank you.
Okay, so there's provisions in here.
Yeah, we have a lot of latitude on this one,
That's what I want.
especially being on school.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so yeah, I just encourage everyone to take a look at these things. Yes, that will be awesome.
Yeah, thanks for pointing those out. And yeah, on the board agenda, there's the 3 policies. The old one, the press one that has all the legal references, and then the essential new one. So they're all right.
Any more questions?
That was it for
You
you?
said,
Yeah, so 6.60. And admittedly, I have not looked at the press policy. This may flesh out some of my questions. However, if you look at 6.60, and Jason, if you can scroll down to number 8. So there's a handful of these that this falls into. And the beginning of number 8 says in all schools, citizenship values must be taught, right? Yada, yada, yada.
Mhm.
Then in number 10, 11, 16, 17, 19, 21, 23, 24, in all schools.
Yep.
But it doesn't specify anything beyond that. So how many times is it taught in all schools? What's the frequency? Does it have to be taught in this particular K through 5 once? Is it taught every year? Who's tracking this? Who's verifying that these things are being taught? Like, none of that verbiage is in here. So it's very vague. So I mean, literally, you could teach once about, say, patriotism, K through 5, and you're in compliance. So I don't know if there's more specifics that you know that I don't, but I think we need a little more specificity on all of these that begin with in all schools, because it's just a vagary is what it amounts to.
Each of those have different requirements. For example, physical fitness is 3 times a week required.
Yeah.
Health at the middle school is 16 weeks. Is it 18 weeks? The equivalent of 2 quarters
Mhm.
in 6th to 8th grade. Or whatever is deemed the middle school. There isn't necessarily a requirement at the elementary school for health.
Mhm.
So everything has its own requirements. And so if you read down in the press policy
Mhm.
under 32, then it gives you some other citations, see sample policy 650 school wellness, that might have the PE portion in there.
I see. So these are being tracked by somebody,
If there is a requirement,
right?
define teaching patriotism, I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, so that's the thing, like some of these, okay, that's great, yeah, I mean, you're gonna talk about it and then that's it. And then who do you check with to make sure it's been taught? Like, I just wanna make sure that these are great ideas and I want all of these things to be taught. We need a robust curriculum. But we also need to be able to say, all right, who taught this? When was it taught? Are we in compliance?
Right.
That's all I'm looking for.
Right. So we are in compliance. We just had our compliance audit,
Mhm.
and that's part of their audit is to go through and look at samples of lesson plan units and study. And where we're out of compliance because the laws have changed in the last few years and they haven't caught up with all of the additional requirements, especially in the area of social studies.
Yeah.
We're a little bit behind, so we have to put those into
Okay,
our curriculum. So yes, we are. If you're asking about compliance, yes, we're in compliance. If you're asking me to define the number of minutes that we talk about patriotism and what that means in elementary school,
right,
Not
that's
there.
something you put your thing on, right, okay. That's all I got for this.
I just had one more question. And I wasn't able to access that Senate. If that's possible, but I'm able to check out the updated. 6260. It's a complaints about curriculum, obviously, it's this topic that's come up recently. Instructional materials and programs, so they break the complaints down into 2 categories. First being where a student believes their rights have been violated. The second, all others. For all others, it specifies that there can be a curriculum objection form filed. Do we have that? Is that a standardized form or,
yeah, we could produce one.
okay, it would have to be produced, but we don't have. Something like, that's not issued by, okay,
I mean, it would be part of this policy of the amendment.
yeah,
The
The
administrative
implementation.
procedures, yeah.
okay. And that's it for me.
Is that something that should be available on this?
It might be. That's, for sure.
If it's not, can it be?
It could be, sure.
And
Oh, that's it.
I'm sure if just to let everyone know, if you have a problem with any curriculums, an email will get to you. You don't necessarily have to go find a form, you just say, hey, can we discuss this?
I only bring that up.
I know.
Because if
It is.
we're gonna adopt a policy, regular policy review that we adopted, then certainly
I,
don't want to pick the switch to hit ourselves with, right?
I get that, and I agree with you. I just want to make sure everybody knows, whoever's listening, that if you have a complaint, do not wait for an official form. Send an email to your teacher, principal, superintendent, whoever's most appropriate for that, or straight to the board if you like.
And for the reason that I brought it up, I mean, is to get people to do that on their own is probably kind of a big ask. But if there's a form out there that they can see, you might get some better feedback as to what's going on. I mean, a lot of people, to say, hey, you start with a teacher and work your way up. That message has been, repeated, but that doesn't always happen. There are still people that just don't know what to do. So I think it would be helpful to have it available. Just click on the button and go about curriculum.
All right, any other policy reviews anyone wants to talk about? Make sure you do at least skim them over before you vote on them. There's a lot of them. Goal review.
Okay, so, this board currently as it's seated has one more meeting. So if I take this opportunity to at least briefly overview, give a little bit of an update of where we are with our goals for this year, because we spent a lot of time working on that last summer and creating our goals. And so thought I'd just do a brief overview and update of where we're at. Some of them, I'll go through. I don't have a fancy PowerPoint ready to go. I don't have a huge presentation. I'll just talk you through it, and we'll go from there. In Super Eval, or the evaluation tool that we chose last summer, I have been updating and going along in each of the categories when I can and when the opportunity presents, putting some documentation in place. The trick is when, for you to see them, I don't have to complete it, but I can't update it while you see them. So I don't want to leave it open for a week. So if you want to see them, I can open it up for a period of time to look at, so you can look through in more detail on each of these, to see where we're at. I'd be happy to do that. I don't know if it's best to leave it open for a few days and just let the board know that it's gonna be open for a few days, or if you want to just text me or email me when you want to take a look at it and I'll shut it down. But that's one glitch that I came across in the system, is I can't keep updating this. I have to say, show the board. Submit to the board for review. So once I submit it, I can go back and unsubmit it and make changes. But while I submit it to you, I can't change, no one can change it. It's locked out. So if you're interested in that, but meantime, I will just go through some of the goals that we talked about. So we talked about a reading and math goal, of course, that's what we're all about. That's why we exist, is to give kids the skills that they need to be successful in life. Reading and math are those foundational building blocks that we need to teach our kids. So we focus on reading and math, and specifically not just reading, but ELA, English language arts, so writing, communication, etc. Those are our goals. We're using the MAP test, that's the measures of academic progress, as an indicator of how well our kids are doing. So our goals at the beginning of the year were to see us on our conditional growth index increase from 52.75 to 55.6 in math and 41 to 46 in reading. That's not an achievement level, that's a growth indicator. What we're trying to do is get to that 60+ percentile. If we can maintain that, that would be an outstanding, exceptional growth indicator. We have hit that at times at Millburn, and we hit that regularly in some grade levels, but our goal is to be more consistent, because if we can do that every year, that means that our kids are picking up on average more than a year's growth in a year's time. It's pretty tough to do consistently as a school district. So that's where we're headed, and that's a pretty aggressive goal, but that's what we're trying to accomplish. That would be exceptional. So under this supporting, oops. Go back. So under the supporting programs, have our running administrative agenda you can take a look at. I have our opening day speech and I'll keep adding to that. But I'm not gonna give a report to the board until May. That's when it's scheduled at the earliest. And probably not till June because we haven't done our spring test, so I don't have any numbers to say how we're doing. That makes sense. But we're doing all kinds of activities to support that goal. Professional learning communities, you've heard me talk about professional learning communities. And it's simply put, professional learning communities are, what do we want our kids to know and be able to do? How do we know if they know it? What are we gonna do if they don't know it? So that's our system of support to get them up to speed. And then what do we do if they already know? That's gifted programming and enhancements. So it's our targets. What do we want our kids to know what to do at each grade level? That's professional learning communities. Having clear targets on what we want them to know and be able to do. If we're clear on that, and then get them to do that and monitor that progress along the way, we will achieve this goal. So that's where we're headed as a district. And we want to be clear on that. So that comes with skills. What do we want them to know to be able to do in skills and reading and math? Those are the most important. That's what we focus on as a district. That's where if you look at where our resources are divided and spent, that's where we spend a bulk of our resources, reading and math. That's skill set. I should say ELA. If we look at, then we also have content that we want them to know. Content would be that social studies that Peter was referencing earlier. What do you want them to know about patriotism? What do you want them to know about American history? What do you want them to know? That's content time, and we spend time on that, but it's significantly less than those skills that we need especially our young students. So in a progression, K through 12, you'll see us focus way more on skills early on, reading, especially in the K3, reading is vital. And math in the 2-5 is vital for building blocks for the rest of their life. So that's where we really focus our energies and efforts, but we also do teach content as well. So what do we want them to know and be able to do? Mainly, what do we want them to know in the content time? That's science, social. The third sort of spoke to that is behaviors. What do we want them to be able to do behaviorally? How do we want them to interact with each other? We want them to be kind. We want them to be respectful. We want them to get their homework done. We want them to work hard and show effort. So those are the behavior goals. We also work on their behavior goals. That's part of our restorative practices. That's the other half of our goals for the year, is getting them to connect with each other, socially healthy with each other, and how do you interact with others in society? How do we behave in the hallways? How do we behave on the bus, et cetera, et cetera. Respect for others, property, all of those things we teach kids. So that's in a nutshell of what we're focused on in school, but this particular goal is focused on the ELA and math. We want our kids to grow because we think that, I'm assuming we're still on that same page, where that's our biggest goal in our district. Most important.
So Jason, I have a question on that.
Yeah.
In policy 615, it's the school accountability. Talks about the school measuring success, academic success. Clearly, this is an example of it, and equity. So I was thinking, how do we measure equity? And as you're speaking through this, I'm going back to where we were talking about finding those, looking within a cohort, finding out those that were at different levels of achievement and measuring the success and the improvement upon the different levels of achievement. I mean, in my mind, that's measuring equity, right? Success in our equity efforts.
Yep.
Is there, I mean, is that consistent with what your thinking is here and how we would be compliant with that policy?
Yes.
Because I struggle, how do you measure success in equity? And I'm thinking, okay, the easiest thing to me is something that's quantifiable. Obviously, when you're looking at scores, you can measure that. And so it took me down that road thinking about how that special attention is given to those who need extra help. Summer school, right? Summer school being made available to that. Okay.
So when you talk about a professional learning, that's a great question. Appreciate it. It'll talk about this goal and why I really lobbied hard to move to this goal.
Yeah.
Versus how many people can we get over this 67%, 70%,
Yeah,
67 percentile. So in the past, we picked a number. It's not a bad thing. We picked a number and said, okay, we want to get as many kids above this line. This is not moving. How do we get as many kids as we can above this line? Well, what you're really measuring then is this narrow band that's right around this line to move them up a little bit or down a little. So if that's our goal, where should we spend our resources? Would be here. Now, if you're looking at equity, talking about equity, we need every kid on every band you're measuring. They are all counting in that this goal.
Success, yes, success is regardless.
So we're looking at every student, and in a PLC, you say, okay, what do we want the kids to know and be able to do? This is where they're at. And if they're not, what do we do if they're not? Well, then we have to give them the resources that they need to get to those goals, and that's measured by individual students. So we look at every student, and we need every student to be there no matter what. And growing, or we're never gonna hit. You can't hit 60+ percentile growth if there's a group or significant number of kids who are not growing.
Yeah.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I'll just be thinking of different examples of how that could be, one, documented, right?
Yep.
We can recognize that.
Yep.
Okay,
Another way to
very different way of thinking than just that, that
Right.
round number that you're trying to.
you think about, I mean, it's easier to think about in running. So if we want our kids to run the mile and under, let's say we want second graders to all run the mile in under 10 minutes. Well, okay, some are gonna be able to without practice. They just run the mile. Okay, they're good. Some of them are gonna run the mile in 11 minutes, but with some training, we can get them over that line. Some kids are never gonna be able to run the mile or cannot even run or have other limitations or asthma. They're never going to get that, especially in second grade. That's really not a good measure of their success. Are those kids fit, or are they improving their health? Those are better measures, but in education, we tend to look at the simplistic and say, okay, we have to, it's easy to measure this number. Let's pick this number and measure it, because it is easier. And look at one score whereas our mission and our vision talks more about well-rounded students, talks more about the whole child. Let's look at it that way. But we also want to make sure that we're emphasizing the ELA skills and the math skills are exceptionally important. The ability to communicate thoughts and ideas in writing or speaking, exceptionally important. Do math. As a citizen, those are important skill sets. Also important to have learned things, that information. Because how are you going to know what to look at if you don't, or what questions to ask if you don't understand what the Constitution is, or what government is, or what a democracy means. Does that fully answer that question?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good question. Thank you. That's goal one. Goal two is building connections, understanding the value of creating a strong parent voice in the educational process of children. The superintendent will create a system of regular parent focus groups to gather feedback from parents on school district performance and issues. A final summary report of the systems, groups, feedback, and opportunities will be provided in a report in May of 23. A minimum of 2 focus groups is the expectations. That what we talked about is getting back to, hey, this is post-COVID, we need to get parents back involved, back in the building and get more of those habits. Parent U was the answer to that. We had the biggest turnout of any parent university I've ever had a couple weeks ago, and I sent out the summary of that. Did everybody get the summary?
No.
I gotta send it to you guys. So I'll send out to you the summary. I sent it out to all the parents. So, the results of that. So that was one. We have 2 more scheduled.
Oh, 2 more?
2 more. One on restorative practices, because I think it's important to understand why we're doing restorative practices, what restorative practices are, so that everyone has a clear understanding of what that means and what we're trying to accomplish with that. Not too complicated. We're just trying to get kids connected and ready for learning, so that we can hit growth targets. Yeah, and then the final one was talking about math. Talking about a math progression from 3rd grade on up through senior in high school. I think it's helpful for parents to know early what that math progression is, so there's no surprises when we get to the middle school. Every year I get some very concerned parents about, is my kid gonna be able to get to college because they're falling behind in math? And once I explain that progression, they go, oh, got it. It's gonna be fun. So that's where we're going with that one. And as pieces of evidence for that, I've got just the parent university and the summary and the agendas. And also the December family time, some of the professional development we did with our staff earlier in the year. And I'll keep adding to it. Goal number 3, building connections, was about professional development for our staff to increase cultural competency during the school year. So I did one group using the intercultural developmental inventory. That was one group, 8 sessions. And then Autumn, our assistant principal from middle school, and Jake and I together did a book study on cultural competency with Loretta Hand. So I've got that information in there as well. If you want to take a look at what was talked about, you're welcome to do that. All the supporting evidence is there. The slides talking about the book, what we talked about opening day, and again, some of the other bigger picture family time was how are we connecting across the district. And the 4th goal, managing resources, that's about budgeting and resourcing, decisions about program practices, curricula. Make sure everything's research-based that we do implement. We're not presenting any new curriculum for next year. But we are starting to look at our math program because it's been a while. It's time to update our math, especially at the K-5 level. And we're looking at how, I think I mentioned this a couple of board meetings ago, but how does that align to our school districts in the high school? So Millburn has the unique opportunity to send our kids to 3 different high school systems, and they all have a little bit different math philosophy. Which you think math is math, but the order in which we teach math and sometimes the manner, but it's different at each of the high schools, and there's not one way that's better or worse than the other. They're just different. Warren is a traditional model where our kids can leave here and they either go into Algebra 1, Algebra 1 honors, honors geometry, or honors Algebra 2. Those are the choices going to Warren. So that's the traditional pathway. Going to Lakes, they're integrated in their math, so they teach geometry, trigonometry, Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 all together over 3 courses. So they have Math 1, Math 2, Math 3, and they teach them as they need them and as they integrate those 3 subject areas, freshman, sophomore, junior. That's a little bit different. And Grades Lake's more of a traditional, and they do a little bit of integrated, but it's mostly traditional again. So our kids, when they are in 8th grade, they take high school Algebra 1. They take pre-algebra. Let me go in order. Pre-algebra, high school Algebra 1, or honors geometry as 8th graders. Those are the 3 levels of math that we have in 8th grade. Well, going into Lakes, how does that match with 1, 2, and 3? Pre-algebra matches up nicely with integrated 1. It's that algebra, high school algebra group that they either go into Algebra 2 or integrated 2, but then they have to take a summer bridge course in order to get into that program. If they take honors geometry, depending on how they do in honors geometry and their comfort level, they go to Math 2, or they can go into Math 3. So it doesn't match up exceptionally with Lakes. So we're working on that. So and majority of our students do go to Lakes High School, but if we switch to an integrated system, then we're not gonna match up with the Warren Grace Lake. So then those kids would have to take a break for that, presumably. Trying to work out those details with math. But at the elementary level, our current math program does not align with the standards like we would like it to. So when we did our priority standards last year, and then we tried to match up our book to the priority standards that we're trying to teach, our book is not very well aligned. So our teachers are taking lesson plans from wherever they can, from other books, putting it together to match the standards, and they're doing a great job. But it's tough, and we'd like a curriculum that would match up a little better. So we're gonna start looking at that next year. So that's this 4th goal is curricula, budgeting, which Carly and I will be rolling out again soon for next year. Staffing, all of that goes into goal 4, and I'll put any evidence that I can as we go along.
Often do you change curricula, like roughly? I know it's different per subject, but every 5 years, needs basis.
We would love to be on a 7-year cycle, would be best for Millburn. Our social studies books at the middle school, Ronald Reagan is still president in middle school. Oh, yeah, that's right. because it's adopted, yeah. That's right, yeah, for that. Yeah. But those, prior to right before COVID, about 20 years.
Yeah.
Yes, those ones are very old.
And the math book, the honors geometry book is the same book I have.
I'm sorry, one more time.
It's only 10 years ago.
Does much change with that though? I
No,
mean,
not much
that's,
change.
yeah, that's a little different than history and
Yeah,
things of
history
that
changes.
nature, right? Right.
It's still the same.
Still works.
Still
Still
having with this as I read it.
So to answer your question, we'd love to be on a 7-year cycle with everything.
Okay.
We're not there.
Right.
Is that just like in regards to updating curriculum or changing it such as with like doing the math and how it's like the methodology you just teach?
So you're asking the what versus the how?
Yeah, because he was asking like how often the curriculum is updated, so is it like, I know that the preference is every 7 years, but as it's updated, is it simply updated as far as keeping up with the times, or is it also, are you also including when, like methodology?
Yeah,
Like current pedagogy and all that.
yeah, methodology, that's an ongoing so we're talking about how we teach, we're always learning, and teachers are always going to professional development and picking up new ideas about how to be better, more effective in learning and focusing on student learning. That's part of the PLC process too, the professional learning communities. The idea behind those professional learning communities is say, okay, this is where we want our kids to go. And you meet in teams of, let's say, the second grade team. And we have an awesome second grade group of teachers. They're all talking about what their kids are, how they're doing in class. And one teacher might look at their formative assessment that they gave last week and say, you know, I only got 50% of my kids pass that. And another teacher may have 90% of their kids that passed it. And to say, what did you do to get the kids to understand? And so that's an ongoing constant change.
Okay.
And that's the ideal of the professional learning communities, and that's,
Yeah.
we've always done pieces of that. Our teachers are really good at working together. So we're always trying to learn. But this is formalizing a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. But the content, mostly it's the materials. So when we talk about curriculum at the board level, it's the materials that we're using to meet the standards, because it's gonna cost us money.
Well, I say I was joking, back there. The math problems that my kids had in high school, the layout was very different than we had. So I think even just a presentation, could very much change over time. It's been a lot longer than 10 years. For me, since being in high school. But it looks, I'm looking at it, where's the symbols? So it does look very, very different.
I forget who the math teacher was, but, when I was teaching Jillian how to do some math, with it to the teacher, she was in middle school, said, well, that's the old guy way to do it. So,
I've gotten that feedback too.
yeah, it was like, get the right answer.
Okay.
One question, you said that we're gonna be evaluating or reevaluating some of the math curriculum?
Yep.
Okay. I forget the name of the tool, the online tool that's used here.
Schoology?
Alex? I'm sorry,
Schoology or Alex?
what was the second one? Alex?
Alex.
Like the math.
Yes. Okay. That seems to be very effective. I hope that doesn't go away. As a matter of fact, I wish I would have written that. That was pretty well done.
Yeah, that, again, we'll review if that's effective.
Done. Sure seemed to be.
And that goes with our middle school books.
Oh, okay.
So it's a subscription with the book and Alex together. And we've done it that way, and we've purchased Alex separately. There's some different functionality if you buy it on but it's a certain subscription per year cost for students. Yeah, it's been very effective for
Yeah,
them.
I would have thought that it would have been. Yeah, pretty good.
Okay, any questions on the goals? Again, text me if you want.
Thank you. Investment plan?
So, as you know, Dr. Johns and I have been, working over the past, month or so, looking into different investment options. And in March, we met with Wintrust Financial. Yeah, boring. I'm just kidding. It's numbers, not fun. Fifth Third Bank, to discuss different investment options with them. So what we learned, was quite interesting. We currently utilize Wintrust MaxSafe Public Funds Money Market. And so at each of your, chairs, you should have a blue packet that just provides some additional information on the Wintrust MaxSafe Public Funds accounts. So this is what we're using right now. And as of March 24th, the rate within the investment product was 4.79%. So basically what MaxSafe does is it pays 5 basis points over the Illinois State Treasury rate. Really good. Since July 1st, we've earned over $290,000 in interest. Pretty good.
Wow.
Yeah. So what we learned when we met with these two banks is that, neither of them are anticipating any downward changes in interest rates in the next year or so. What we know is that right now, we only have the ability to invest for a short term, like 60, 90 days. So what our plan is for right now is to keep the money in the MaxSafe account, because we know that the interest rate is good, plus the 5 basis points. It's going to possibly increase again, is what our representative at Wintrust was saying. And what we'll continue to do as we work through the projected cash flow for the next couple of years through fiscal year 25 is determine if we can do any type of long-term investment. So with that, Dr. Johns and I will continue to explore long-term investment opportunities. That's where it stands today.
Yeah, that was good news to hear that we're getting such a good rate currently and that there's no advantage now to what we have the option to do to go to any place else. So our recommendation will be to status quo
Mhm.
until we see the rates go back down, and that might be a big enough differential. It'll probably cost us more to time and effort to move money than get back. We know it's just tiny.
Is it a fixed rate for the whole term, for the 90 days?
If we went with a different
No,
investment option.
with Wintrust. So if it's, you said it was paying 4 something,
So this is just, so this is a money market, it's not a fixed term, it's looking at the rate every day, and then at the end of the month, it gives you an average over that month.
thanks.
Can we? Did we talk about the survey question?
No, you have something?
No, I have a question for the board.
Yes.
Direction for that. The reason why there's no survey is there's no direction to what the survey would be surveying. What information are you looking for as a board? That's why I didn't send anything out, because I was unclear of what we were asking for.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
it was obviously a tricky question.
Right.
And I think there's an anticipation that something should have been out there. Or if we say, why not? And if it's
Well,
being that the board can't.
The why not was because, as I explained, there's no, I don't know what you're looking for.
And that might be. Well, the board can't figure it out, I don't know. But I mean, if you don't want to go that route, then, now we have to say something, I would think, as opposed to just leaving it, hang out there. So. Anybody?
Can you clarify what survey this is that we're speaking about?
Yeah, that's.
Or was?
That's part of the problem, it ended up getting very, very complicated.
Was this related to like the early January meetings?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Did it get very specific as to whether we were gonna follow the law or not? I don't know.
I think that's where we ended up, was this is the law, this is what came down, and
This is what we.
not that we actually voted on that, but I think it was just kind of an assumption we're going to follow the law as opposed to not. And that was my takeaway from that.
So maybe that's the response.
Yeah,
You know, they
Yeah.
got-
just as like a
There's no need for-
finality.
There's no need for a survey
Yeah.
because
We had the lawyers come out and explain the law
Yeah.
to us, and we're gonna follow the law.
kind of ties up a loose end if we go that way.
Are we still getting questions about that?
I did.
Did he?
Well, no, just, right. Basically, where's the survey?
Right,
That-
right.
That's what, that's not what it is.
Yeah.
That is. It'd probably be easier to say that the board determined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're all in agreement on that.
Yeah.
So that was that, we had that big meeting with the lawyers and that was in the cafeteria or whatever, they went over everything, yeah.
Um,
I'm sorry, one more thing.
Yeah.
You think that would put an end to it then?
I thought it was ended.
One more time.
I thought it was ended. I thought it was all done.
Yeah, well, there's people asking,
Send them to
and
me,
it's not me.
send them to me. If they didn't get it after the last email that I sent out, they're not gonna get it.
That would be,
That might be better to do it.
I already did.
yeah.
Well, I mean, like send them to you.
Right.
As opposed to like, hey, let's reopen
Yeah.
this.
I would.
Right.
We talk about that offline.
Sure.
Future agenda item. Our board policy updates, they're always out there. We have a bunch. So for new people, there's a bunch on, in the drive, you can read them. And that's basically how we run the school, so everything that we kind of do should be a policy somewhere.
Like laundry, you're never done.
It's, yeah, it keeps coming.
And we just constantly go through them because they update the laws. We get the service from Press Policy, and what they do is look at the law, write the policy and say, here's our suggestion. And then you can take it as you know, John loves to dig into them and say, do we want to change this or not? And that's what we can do.
I wouldn't say I love taking it.
You're gonna miss it.
I thought you
You're gonna
loved
miss
it. The budget, as I said, will be coming out for next year pretty soon, next month or two. We have fees for extracurriculars, which we examine every year. And someday we're gonna have an MPSS presentation. For the new members, coming in, proposed school board members, meetings for next year. So, please take a look at those, so you know what those are. We talked at the last meeting on if you have suggestions to the administration for how they can better, reach out to the community. So my suggestion for Jason was to check into like one of those email marketing campaign things, and he's gonna check on the price of that. Hopefully. So,
Another one I looked into was like reaching out to community leaders. So like Dominic, Metro, like, you know, trustee, people who have known influence. Who can reach a lot of other people, say, hey, just put this bug in your ear. We wanna, you know, maybe put this on your digital list type of thing. And it's the only other thing I came up with other than mass emails and encouraging people to go to the site. Can't think of much else.
I did look at, like MailChimp or
Yeah,
something, but
yeah,
it's not really, that's designed for if you have a business.
Yeah.
And trying to reach random people. We're looking for something that's concentrated to
Mhm.
3 zip codes. That's a challenge with the mailers. So we can do a mailer, we've done this in the past, where we've done our own mailer out to our community. And you can pick, you can isolate it into, get pretty close to the Millburn district. There'll be a few that leak into Gurney, Lyndhurst. And that's gonna be about, just for the postage, for that is, around $4,000 per mailer. There's 3,000 households. So that's an option. And we stopped that because people are complaining about spending it. There's always gonna be somebody who complains about it, there's gonna be
Could we
somebody
do
who likes
some,
it.
could we like send out one mailer and say, hey, attach,
Yeah.
sign up at this website.
QR
to
code.
Yeah,
Yeah, QR
Yeah.
code,
That's even better.
sign
Yeah.
up here, and that way, Jim's done and doesn't have kids in, you get your notice and you can just click on the QR code, sign up for the bi-monthly emails and whatever, and
Yeah, or opt out, right, because then we can filter that, if you don't wanna receive it. Put something in there like that.
I'm not certain, I like the way you said Jim's done.
well.
You were done before.
I haven't had a lot of time to do it, but I was looking at, trying to hit the voter rolls with, zip codes. It's something I've been kicking around. I haven't been able to get real far with it. That might change. I need a little bit more time. Because I'm so busy with the board.
There's a lot here, yeah.
I will continue to look into that and see if I can come up with something and match them up.
Sounds good. Superintendent report.
So our next meeting, board, this particular board will be resigned. Fancy Latin term called signed guy, but this board is ended and then the new board is seated. So what we do, just as a reminder, is pretty light on the agenda as far as decisions go, major decisions. Typically, in the past, boards don't want to make any decisions that are going to be pushed up in the future, and the new board doesn't want to sit down and make all kinds of decisions that they don't have a whole lot of background information on. So we will have an agenda. This board will do all business, then it will end. Then the new board members will take the oath of office, be seated, and then we have the organization of the board. The reorganization of the board, that's where we elect the president, vice president, and secretary. Those are the three official positions. And we'll also be asking for an IASB representative that goes to the conference. I think Peter's done,
Mhm.
maybe, no.
Past 2 years I did it. I think.
Okay.
I think it was Stephen before me. It
Steve.
was Stephen, yeah.
We need a CEDAW representative. Sean has done that. As well, so we'll need somebody to fill those other roles as well. So just be thinking about that and also be looking at the dates, because we'd like to approve our dates for next year at that meeting. And also the ISB, new starting right, board member training, we've done that in the past, and we'd like to continue that. Laura Martinez from ISB gave me dates today. She doesn't have any June dates, but she does have some July dates. So in the middle of July, the 14th, I think would be best. So if we can look at our calendars, and for those of us who are still on board, we'll be looking at those dates next time too. That, I believe, is it for this week.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In your 331 BOE update, you mentioned an assistant principal.
Yeah.
look forward to introducing her to the board.
Yes,
She's not here unless she's hiding over
yes,
there.
so the board will be approving her, April 20th.
Okay.
If she can make it, I hope she can.
Business office report.
All right. So the first part is the investing. If we scroll down to maintenance of effort, you may recall this from, previous board meetings. Each year, the district is required to do a calculation called MO. It stands for maintenance of effort. It's a governmental requirement for any school that's receiving funds from the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So essentially, what we have to do, we do this calculation that ensures that the district spent the same or more locally on special ed than it did last year. And if we pass, that means that we continue to get this funding through IDEA. If we were to not pass the calculation, then we would have to pay the federal government back some of the money that we received through the IDEA award. So good news is Brandy Baird and I went down to CEDAL earlier in March. We completed the no calculation and it passed. That's wonderful. At the next board meeting, April 24th, Catherine Loney, she's the vice president of benefits consulting from our benefits cooperative. She's going to come talk a little bit about our healthcare changes and prices for next year's open enrollment. So she will be here to answer any questions that you have. And then scrolling down a bit to E-rate. This is another federal program that's sponsored through the Federal Communications Commission. And so the purpose of this program is essentially to make telecommunications and information services more affordable for libraries and schools. And it gives schools and libraries 40% of the cost of certain telecommunications and information service equipment or materials. So earlier this calendar year, Jason Tomalandis, who's the coordinator of technology services, and I met to go over what are some materials or services that the tech department could really benefit from? What are the needs? And Tom identified network switches. I'm not going to lie, I'm not very tech savvy here. So basically a network switch is something that routes network traffic throughout the school. He said they're past their lifespan, many of them are, by a few years. So we submitted a bid through the E-rate program, which resulted in 3 vendor responses last week. The lowest bidder came back as CDW, who happens to be our one of our vendors that we use quite regularly here at the district. So I'm happy to say that we'll be upgrading to 7 switches for the 2024 school year, which should say 2024, will be reimbursed over $16,000 from the E-rate program.
Do you know how many switches in total we have?
How many switches in total we have? Not off my cuff, but I do know that what he's also trying to do is reduce the number we have.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to say that when we met, it was in the 40s or so, but he's whittling them down for sure. I could be wrong. Oh, and then any other questions on that?
No, thank you.
Okay. And then very last under human resources, summer custodial help. I've been working with the building and grounds department to identify our summer routine maintenance agenda. Typically, or prior to the pandemic, the district would typically try to hire up to 6 summer custodians to help get all of the work done that happens during the summer, which is a lot of deep cleaning, grounds maintenance, Last year, we were able to only hire 2. I'm thinking that this summer will probably be somewhat likely. I've noticed that, the village, for example, is already, looking for their summer help and is paying a little bit more than we are. However, we will be recommending, that the district hire summer help for 2023. And then the pay rate for any Millburn staff who would, work as a custodian in the summer. So maybe a bus driver, paraprofessional would be $15.22, and any new hires, the hourly rate is $13. And then the last 2 pages here are just give you an idea of the typical summer work that's done, within the buildings and grounds department.
Thanks, Kelly. Any questions? Does anyone have any board reports? No? We don't have any closed sessions? Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Vote. We are closed. Thank you, everyone, for your help.
So I asked him to